I'm Mary Harries, and I was Deputy Head at Balby High from 67 to 81. There was nothing else was offered me.
Right.
There were no career prospects in those days. So in the end, I thought, well, if I'm going to go into teaching, I want to go to London to train. So I went to First Down College in London, which was owned by the London County Council. It was the only college they had. And it was very, very, very well funded. Other people at other colleges were having to buy things when they went on school practice. We had it all available. I lived in the Hall of Residence, which was opposite the college where we went for lessons. And the whole college is now a school, but the Hall of Residence is still a Hall of Residence for London University. So, and it was newly built. We all had our own rooms, which was very unusual in those days. And the head of the college was very forward-looking. Other colleges in London, they all had to be in at certain times. Our principal said, no, they're going to be in 2 years' time teaching children. They are responsible adults, because of course the legal age then was 21. So the college was in loco parentis at the time, which is a bit amazing when you think about it now. 18-year-olds now would be horrified. I came to Yorkshire because I saw advertised a very interesting experiment run by West Yorkshire, as it was then. Bright children who were being overlooked. And they were going into schools, and then these bright children were being gathered together for about a few terms and taught in small classes to discover why the IQ was so high and they were performing so badly, to see what the problem was. And it was really interesting. One girl we discovered couldn't hardly see a thing. When we arranged for her to have glasses, and she looked and she said, I didn't realise there were patterns on the curtains. And it had gone unnoticed by the school, but also by her parents, who were caring parents. One boy could hardly hear a thing. So some were just not interested, or badly behaved, or bored. So, but it ground to a halt, because once the heads discovered how bright some of their pupils were, they weren't willing to let them come. We can cope with them, which was a shame, because there were small classes, pupil-led teaching, rather, which suited these bright children. And I mean, we had an inspection, and one inspector said, would you like to come and read to me? Do you mind if I finish doing this first, please? He was very polite, but then I'll come and read to you with pleasure. But you see, it wouldn't have gone down well. In some class teachers would have coped with it, but others wouldn't have coped with it. Fortunately, the inspector thought that was a point in our favour. That he was quite happy to talk to us about things. So that, and then I saw advertised at Swinton this job. So I thought, it's not a lot different. So I applied, and I was quite surprised to get it, actually. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And then, as I said, I saw the job advertised for Balby High and applied for it. And then everyone said, oh, you don't want to go there. It's awful school, awful school. And it was just after the John Watson affair with the buns. One day she was walking home, and the children had been to cookery, and they'd made buns. and they threw the buns at her. And of course, that's what everybody, the only thing people knew about Balby High at that time was John Watson, the drama teacher, got pelted with buns. So the job was for a deputy head. No, it wasn't called that. It was called a senior mistress in those days. You weren't considered a deputy head because I was a woman and the heads were men. So I was a senior mistress. It was purely to look after the girls, nothing else. There were no other duties. It was just to look after the girls, and maybe if there was a problem with the women's staff. It was purely based on gender. At that time, I wasn't doing anything administrative at all. I basically only taught the less able children, though, but I didn't have a full timetable. It was about a 3/4 timetable. And because I could help sort out, I was starting to do some administrative, so I was able to make sure that the low ability children were taught in smaller groups, which was to their advantage and everybody else's advantage, because the classes were much easier. The behavioural problems weren't as bad in a small group. The relationship between the staff and pupils was very, very good. For most of the staff, there were some who were too, how can we say, you sit in your desk and you shut up. But the majority had a very, very good, easygoing relationship, which never went too far. You never got... It seemed to at that time, but things were different. You have to remember it was a different time. The challenge to authority was just beginning. It hadn't come to fruition. What you did notice in that respect was that when you got a new group coming up from another school, and other pupils would say, well, you want to watch her? And they'd say, oh, well, we'll see about that. I can get the better of anybody. That attitude came in while I was teaching while I was at Balby High, I think it began to come in. The challenge to authority, which hadn't been there before, not to the same extent.
High school.
Well, I wasn't with Mr. Martin very long, only a year, and most of the time he was concentrating on the move to Balby, to Woodfield High. He was moving to a brand new school, so a lot of his time was spent sorting out the new school. Mr. Nadin came like a dose of salts, and very different, interested in the school, wanted to make a success of the school for his own, even if nothing else, but for his own benefit. And he was, you could tell he wasn't there for a short time. He wanted to make this school his and a success. Some didn't like his manner. Some didn't like the fact he smelled of smoke, which to me was immaterial. If a man smokes, he smokes. Never smoked at work. And the fact he liked his beer, but none of those affected his work. So to my mind, that was immaterial. But some staff were put off by that. And some staff thought he wasn't polite enough and weren't willing to look to his other points, that the school was run well. There was if you had a problem, you could go to him and he would sort it. And he would sort parents out. There was still a bit of him and her, in that there was a ladies' staff room that the men didn't come into, and that we guarded. And I think the men were quite jealous of it. The ladies' staff room, and particularly on a Friday, the secretary used to order fish and chips from the local fish shop. Whichever staff was available went to fetch them. We all went into the ladies' staff room and had our fish and chips. The men were not invited. But that was the only time, really. I think we all got on very well. They were just jealous, we said. It was good, friendly banter. But we did like having the staff room. Yes, when we did the 1920s, it was something I'd heard of it being done in another school. And I said, could we do a 1920s? And I've never before had this general parent or area being so involved. The stuff that came in was just phenomenal. And and the place was packed. We had the head of music at the time, I can't remember his name. He did 20s music. We had 20s costumes. It was a lovely period to do, actually. And of course, some of them, the grandparents, were they were children in that era. So, it was probably the most successful thing I was involved with, really, was the 1920s. I don't know if we did it for a couple of days. And the things you did, you couldn't do anything about. In fact, you had to walk over the road. The dining hall was in the prefabs, the boys' playing field. Yeah, there was a walk. The girls it was the yard, and you had to get the staff to move the cars off first. So but there were frustrations of you couldn't do anything about, really. The main frustration was when we were flooded. The one thing, by mistake, I used to order stock. And by mistake, I ordered, instead of ordering so many mark books, I ordered packs. And I think I ordered 12 packs or something. And when the flood came, I was really worried because I thought, there were all these enough mark books to last for the lifetime of the school and beyond. But we managed to salvage most things, the corridors are flooded. But where the children hung their peg or should have but didn't, there was like a foot blocker. So we were able to get all the stock up on these, so most of it was saved. Balby High School was a community school, more so than the Swinton, which drew from a much wider area. It was epitomised much later when we were just about to be closing, and this lad came and walked down the corridor with me, and he said, he was a rough lad, and he said, "It's a shame, isn't it?" He said, "My dad came here and my granddad came here, but my son won't come here." So that's why it wasn't community school, because their dads had been to the same school. And I suppose that still happens, but not to the same extent, because people go to schools where they want now. They're no longer community schools, because if you don't like the school, you choose somewhere else that you think might be better.